Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. In Ephesians chapter 4, after the Apostle Paul talks about the way that the people were acting that did not know God, he goes on to speak to the Christians there in verse 20, or starting in verse 20, where he says, "But you did not learn Christ in this way, if indeed you heard him and were taught in him, just as the truth is in Jesus, to lay aside in reference to your former conduct the old man, which is being corrupted in accordance with the lust of deceit, and to be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and to put on the new man, which in the likeness of God has been created in righteousness and holiness of the truth." And so here the Apostle Paul is encouraging the believers to put off the old self and to put on the new self. And this is a very common teaching by Paul, a well-known teaching of Paul, to where we're encouraged to no longer live according to who we once were. And he said in chapter 2 of Ephesians that what the old person used to do, that we were, was one who walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, that was living according to the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and we're by nature children of wrath. So we do away with that. God in his love has made us alive through Christ. And now we are a new person, a new creature. And we are to live according to the new person that we are in Christ, not according to the old person that we used to be. And he goes on to describe what that looks like in the following verses. But what we might overlook is what's sandwiched in between these two ideas. Between saying, do not live according to the old self, or the old man, and then when he says we are to put on the new man, in between that, he makes a statement that's very important. There in verse 23, he says, "And to be renewed in the spirit of your mind." To be renewed in the spirit of your mind. To transition from living according to the old self to living according to the new self, which is created by God, you have to be renewed in the spirit of your mind. One mistake we might make is that we skim over that part and then we just say, okay, I have to live according to the new person that I am. And then we just try to change our conduct. So we just try to, if we're angry, we try not to sin. And then if we used to lie, then we try to tell the truth. If we used to steal, then we don't steal anymore. And we try to just kind of control our actions outwardly, which might work sometimes and won't work other times. If we want to transition from the old person that we were to the new person, we got to be renewed in the spirit of our mind. Our actions find their source in the mind. And if the mind ain't right, the actions aren't going to be right. And the Apostle Paul spent 3 chapters of this book, of the book of Ephesians, getting the believer's mind right. And what we mean by that? Well, he spent 3 chapters reminding them of the great blessings that they have in Christ, what God has done for them in Christ, who they are based on what God has done for them in Christ. In the first 3 chapters, you will be very hard-pressed to find any commandment in chapters 1 through 3 of the book of Ephesians. And there's a reason for that. The Apostle Paul is first trying to renew their mind, to remind them of who they are, and to remind them of what God has done for them, to remind them where they came from and where they are now. And whenever they can change their thinking in regards to who they are and according to their identity and things like that, then they're going to be in a better position to live out what they are. And that's important for us to remember as well. Before we try to change our conduct, we got to be renewed in the spirit of our mind. We got to remember who we are in Christ. We got to remember that we've been born again of God's Spirit. We become new creation in Christ Jesus, as 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 17 talks about. We are citizens of heaven. We are God's peculiar people, his chosen possession. We are a holy priesthood. We are all these wonderful things. We are sons of God, heirs of Christ. All these wonderful things that God has given us and has basically endowed within us this new identity, we have to get in line with what God has said about us and to renew our minds and our thinking about ourselves before we can ever think we can be successful in actually living that out. So as we go through and we read Ephesians chapter 4, we go into chapter 5, and we could even say chapter 6. Yes, let's look at the things that the Apostle Paul says that ought to be the expression of a person who has been newly made in Christ, and compare our lives to that to see if we are living according to this description that he gives. But let's also remember that the source of it all, the starting point, is our mind. And to remember that we need to be renewed in the spirit of our mind. And if we can get that right, everything flows out of that. As Jesus said, if you wash the inside of the cup, the outside will become clean also. And hopefully we'll remember that as we're doing our reading today. So these are some things we can reflect on and think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.